I never have guessed. A transgender before my eyes. I never would have known. Hey Spuds, it's Jamie. Welcome back to another video. First on the channel, I don't know, but welcome either way. I'm very glad to have you here today. And we are looking at some more of those cis hets that only meant the best. Woohoo. The cis people who are normally also straight, who really... they mean well, or they at least don't mean bad, and they make comments towards trans people, sometimes just LGBTQ plus people in general, and they don't quite hit the mark. They're a little bit off. So today we're going to be having a look at some posts from an Instagram called Well-Meaning Cis Hets. This is a video I've done a couple times in the past. Actually, I really enjoy doing it. From my understanding, people send in things that cis het people have actually said to them, typically with a good intention, and then these statements are then paired with a stock image to create what we're going to be reacting to. Are you ready? Let's go before I lose my voice for some reason. It's been fine all day, and I go to record and it's like, hello, is that better? Oh, it's still gravelly. What's going on? Hello. We're just gonna have to roll with it. It's gonna be fine. We'll be fine. I've always suspected. A little smug face. Oh yes, I have always had my suspicions about you. You are a suspicious one. I have had my thinkings, my thoughts on you. Yes. I don't know how I'd react if this is... so I'm assuming maybe this is when somebody's coming out. Like, hello, I'm trans.
I guess I have always suspected.
I'm just like, really? Is that really? Or is that just your way of being nice when I come out? It's honestly absolutely miles away from being the worst reaction to coming out. It's not terrible. I guess it depends on the tone, because if it's like, oh, I've always kind of had an inkling, or I've always suspected, it's all cool, that kind of comes across a bit different to, yeah, I've always suspected. It could be bad. It could be good. This is why texting can be difficult sometimes. The tone just gets lost in written communication on occasion. Did you always suspect in a good way?
Or a bad way?
Also, on one hand, I think I'd be like, phew, they were kind of already primed for this and have it set up, and maybe it won't take as long to get their head round or get used to it, blah, blah, blah. But then on the other hand, it's like, was I really that obvious to everybody else as well? Oh, damn. Oh, you know what men are like. I feel like this is quite a good, like, stock image for this. Oh, yeah, you know. Oh, he's just a boy being a boy. Oh, look at him. Oh, yeah, just the boys. I feel like so much behaviour is excused. So much bad behaviour is excused by just being like, oh, you know what boys are like? You know what men are like? Oh, he's just being a typical man. Oh, yeah, let's excuse everything he's done and the learnt incompetence, because that's just a man's prerogative to not know anything about anything. I'm talking about, like, very stereotypical, like, cis het kind of vibe right now. Just, like, excusing a guy not helping around the household or something. So, oh, you know what men are like? They wouldn't even know what button to press on a Hoover. It's like, no, let's stop excusing it and be aware that gender does not impede your ability to know how to do certain things. You can know how to clean and be a man. You can know how to do childcare and be a man. And you can know how to do DIY and be a woman. It's all of this, like, oh, it's
more of a woman's thing. It's more of a man's thing.
No. Well-intentioned, but just not hitting it, right? And do you know what else is well-meaning but just doesn't hit the mark for me? The idea of a new year, new me. Like, what even is that? I don't want to be reinventing myself every year. I am trans. I have done enough. I know who I am. I don't want to be finding a new version of myself. I don't need Jamie 3.7 in the year 2024. You know, for me, like, no matter how big or small the change, I don't need a reinvention come January. Thank you. There's this idea that for January we need to set this super rigid goals and unattainable standards of living, which, let's be honest, is something that's just marketed by businesses more to make profit rather than actually help us. And it's why often when we come to the end of January, we can end up feeling just a little bit rubbish. And like we've not achieved what we wanted to, a little bit like a failure. Because we haven't been hitting the gym 5 times a week like we initially promised ourselves, because we've had to do other things like life. And we still doom scroll sometimes, even though we absolutely definitely promised ourselves that we would not be doing that anymore. With all that in mind is why I'm very excited that Audible wanted to collaborate with me to remind you wonderful spuds that we should take a softer approach to self-improvement that prioritizes you and me and us, prioritizes ourselves. The real you in the here and now, not some 2.0, 3.1 version of yourself. I love Audible and I have an audiobook myself, so this was a no-brainer. I love this message. And Audible have a huge range of wellness content from podcasts to audiobooks that really is something for everybody. One that Shabra and I particularly love at the minute is Boot Camp, but for your brain. It's Derren Brown's Boot Camp for the Brain, which is super useful when you're thinking things like, why do I lose my temper and then regret it? Why am I impulsive or irrational sometimes? And why do I make plans and then not follow through? That is really me, that last one in particular. Wow. Well, it's not your fault and Derren Brown can help you fix it. But if that's not your jam, there are so many other wellness titles to help you be the best you in the here and now, as you're always wanting to be, not just because it's a new year. You can listen to Derren Brown's Boot Camp for the Brain on Audible right now. In the meantime, let's go back to having a look at some more well-meaning cis hets. What's that short for though? What is that? What is that short for? I am going to assume this is to do with names. Like, yeah, it must be. Like, what's that short for though? Because trans people, we have the not quite unique, but the very interesting position that not a lot of people do of choosing our own name. Most trans people will change their name when they come out, some won't. I do think sometimes what that leads to is, I'm not judging anybody else's name choice, just people choosing unusual names or names that are very unusual for how old they are. So like there's names that are in fashion now, but now the people with those names are like babies and young children. So when you come across like a 30-year-old with that name, it's like, well, your parents were ahead of the time, weren't they? And it's like, well, no, I'm just very on time. I feel like also a lot of people just with slightly unusual names could face this, or people with names where their full name sounds like an abbreviation. So if someone's called Tom, it's like, oh, is that short for Thomas? But I feel like what's that short for though is like, you have such an unusual name. What is the longer version of this name? Maybe it's less unusual to me and I would prefer to call you that, because people get very odd about names that they don't feel comfortable with. If they've not heard of it before, they're like, oh, I don't really know how to pronounce that. I'm going to call you this instead. And it's like, no, please, no, don't do that. But that's more of a girl thing. Oh no. Oh, they're doing a thing that I think is more for girls. Whatever will I do? It's the end of the world. But that's more of a girl thing. It's just like the whole gender expression, heteronormative expectations and stereotypes. And there goes my voice again. Hello. Bonjour. Are we back? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's just going to completely disappear at some point throughout this video. It's the kind of gentle judgment. It's not like the outright,
no, you can't do that, it's for girls.
It's just like the, but that's more for girls though, you are aware, right? Did that kind of trying to make you feel uncomfortable about what you're doing. I think it would be fantastic if we got to a point where people can express their gender, have the interests, wear the clothes, do the things, whatever, and it's not this whole, oh, but that's more for girls, or oh, that's more for boys, is things that different types of people enjoy. You want to paint your nails? Doesn't matter. You want to, I'm trying to think of something that's very stereotypically labelled as a boy thing to do. You want to play with trucks? Go for it. There should be no such thing as more of a girl thing or more of a boy thing. I wish I had as much free time as you to care about fashion and outfits. What is this? Is this somebody thinking that being trans is all about the expression and it's just about picking what you wear? And they're like, oh, you must have so much free time on your hands to care that much about what you look like and what you wear. It's like, no, Karen, I just have gender dysphoria. Oh, I don't like how already, how many have we reacted to so far? Like 4 or something. Because I think these are real things that people have had said to them. And it's just this kind of gentle, like, persuasion and like gentle trying to make you feel uncomfortable with who you are and what you're doing without just outright saying it. It's very uncomfortable. It's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to say something outright negative, but I'm going to say something that makes you feel bad. Very bizarre. Like, I don't know the specific context of this comment and whether it was made to a trans person about their gender expression or their identity or whatever, but it is something I've heard before of people being like, oh, well, I don't even have time to think about what my gender is, let alone transition. And it's like, it's not about how much time you have, Ronald. It's about how you're feeling gender dysphoria, who you are, and being true to yourself. And, you know, lots of people don't have very much time. And it just seems to be something that people like to label as, ugh, you've got nothing better to do with your life than think you're trans or be overly concerned with how you look and what you're wearing. She's a real woman's woman. I've heard a man's man. I've never heard a woman's woman or a girl's girl or a boy's boy. I've never heard it for women. You hear like, oh, he's a lad's lad or a man's man. And it's like, what is a woman's woman? It sounds a little bit gay. So does the man's man one. But like, she's a real woman's woman. Is that trying to say like, oh, she's a real womanly woman, she's living up to those womanly stereotypes and expectations, she's such a typical woman? Is that what they're getting at? I never really understand these comments, because it's like, what is a woman's woman? And then obviously he's a real man's man. We obviously have to have this one if we've got woman's woman. Someone explain what a man's man is and a woman's woman. I can only assume that it's, you know, the epitome of stereotypical men and women who are like best buddies only with other men's men and women's women. I don't know. It's just a bit mind-boggling for someone like me. What's that supposed to mean? It's just a bit mind-boggling. That feels like a preemptive excuse for potential bigotry that's about to occur. It's like, I don't mean to be offensive, but it's just a bit mind-boggling for me. So therefore, I think this. And it's like, I think other people's life experiences, if we feel like we have to understand them completely in order to be respectful and accepting of other people, anybody could say it's just a bit mind-boggling for someone like me when interacting with somebody who has an identity or a life experience that isn't their own. You just don't think about it too much. You think about it as much as you need to be a respectful person, to understand as much as you can about the experiences that somebody has gone through or is going through, or what their identity means for their life, and you are accepting of that. You know, if you are not part of a community, if you are not trans, you don't need to understand what it feels like to be trans to be respectful and accepting of trans people. We obviously do not understand all the nuances of being every single identity under the sun, because we can only be ourselves. We can't be anybody else that understand other people's experiences. But what I feel like, and it's not just for trans people, it's for a lot of different identities and people, this is that prerequisite to, I am going to be bigoted, but please excuse it, because it's just too confusing for me. I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm not trans, I'm not LGBT+, so it's just, please forgive me for being rude. That's what it feels like. It's giving up before even trying. At some point, you just have to pick. You have to pick. I'm assuming this is to a non-binary person, or maybe even a bisexual person, or just somebody who is not straight or gay, or somebody whose gender identity is not man or woman. You just have to pick, man. Like, in my head, things are one way or another. Black or white. That is it. There is no in-between of anything in life at all. You must pick. And it's like, no. I feel like telling somebody you have to choose, that's a lot of pressure. And it's like a lot of people have identities, either sexual orientations or gender identities, that are not on one end of a scale or another. They're not like the kind of binary options, right? And that is totally fine. And there is no pressure to pick. You don't have to pick, because there is no picking, because that is just you. Some people are at that point because they don't know who they are yet, or they're going through a time of self-exploration, which is also totally fine, but also should not have any pressure on it to pick. Like, there is no picking. There is no, oh, if you're non-binary, no, you gotta pick one or the other. No, if you're non-binary, you're non-binary. And there's no like, oh, if you're bisexual, actually, you gotta pick. Which one is it?
What do you prefer?
No, there's no picking. You are bisexual. That is it. We will not pick at some point ever, thank you. This is my fab friend. You'll love him. Yeah, you share the same identity, so I'm gonna assume you'll be besties. That's where my head goes instantly when I see this kind of thing. Like, oh, you're trans? You must be best friends with this person that I know who's also trans. You're gonna love each other purely because you're both trans. My college did something like that. I mean, I think it was a bit more because I was a year ahead of someone who came out as trans, and they were like, oh, maybe you could offer some advice. But it did definitely feel a bit like a friendship matchmaking, and really, really lovely guy, but just, you know, when you're just not gonna be best friends with somebody, and that's totally fine. There needs to be more in common. I mean, saying that, a lot of my friends are trans, but I would still be friends with them even if they weren't trans. We just happen to have the opportunity to meet because we're both trans, and we're all trans, and we met at trans related things. But I'm not friends with them because they are trans. I'm friends with them because they are amazing people, and we have a lot more in common than the fact that we're both trans. Woohoo! I feel like it happens a lot where it's like, oh, you're bi? Do you know Richard's second eldest brother's son? He's also bi. And so is their dog. I think you would be best friends. And it's like, no, I do not want to meet this long relative of yours. That's fine. I'm good. I'm so good. Although saying that, most of my friends are LGBTQ plus in some way. If they're not trans, they're another letter of the acronym. Like a vast majority, like 98% of my friends. Do you regret it? Do you regret this thing? And what an odd question to ask. That's the kind of thing, like, no, I was going to say it's the kind of thing you ask over a haircut, but I wouldn't even ask that over a haircut that somebody got. Imagine, like, I don't even know why my brain went there. Imagine if you saw someone and they had like a really drastic haircut and it maybe wasn't your cup of tea, and you're just like, do you regret that? Like, that would be weird, right? We don't do that kind of thing. You would know that you're potentially going to cause somebody some level of discomfort and self-consciousness over their haircut, and that's quite a small thing. Somebody transitioning, going up to them and being like, do you regret this really like major life thing that you've done and these irreversible things? Do you have any regret? Are you just filled with regret?
Can you sleep at night, or are you regretting everything you've ever done?
It's quite no, not quite. It's a very forward question to ask people, and I just see it so much with trans related stuff. It's just like, oh, do you regret that? You know, it's like I could make a video about being like a decade post-op top surgery, like being a decade post-op, and have people like, well, you might regret that one day. Do you have any regrets? Do you regret doing that? It's like, why would I regret it? And if there were any regrets, that would be my information to bring forward, and I absolutely wouldn't be making this like little montage with an upbeat song going, woohoo, 10 years post-op, if I had any regrets. I think it's less of a question, it's more often, in my experience, it's coming from a place of,
you will regret this, and I'm going to keep asking you until one day you say yes, because I know you're going to say yes one day, because I believe that everybody's going to regret doing this.
We thought people might think he was a girl if we chose the other collar. I don't think your beagle cares. That is a beagle, right? A beagle. Yes, it looks like a beagle. I heard that they have a lot of energy. And now the word beagle, sit wherever you are, or standing or whatever, even if you are listening, even if you are watching this on the bus or in a public place, say the word beagle 4 times in a row. I'll say it with you. Beagle, 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 beagle. How weird does that sound? It's one of those words that gets really bizarre really quickly. But this video and this post is not about beagles. So this person, somebody, probably not with a beagle. You don't see many beagles around. I'm still saying beagle. This person was like, we thought people might think he was a girl if we chose the other collar. Now I think doing that for an animal is really extreme, because like they do not notice. They don't care. If you think a collar with a little bit of pink in it is nice, then get it, even if your dog is a boy. It doesn't matter. Does it really matter if people think that your dog is a girl if they're actually a boy. Everybody assumes that both of our cats are girls. There's a big assumption that all cats are girls. So whenever people meet our cats for the first time and we're saying, oh yeah, we got 2 cats, Apollo and Prawn, they're like, oh, how, like, you know, and then they see a photo and they're like, oh, how old is she? I don't care. Apollo and Prawn don't care. And then, like, I will just say, yeah, oh, he's 2. And then people just like, oh, he's really cute. It's not a problem. I also see people doing this with babies. Like, I swear I saw this post one time where it was a mum who'd had a baby girl, and the baby girl had no hair. And even when they dressed this kid in like all pink, they were like,
no matter how we dress her, everybody thinks she's a boy, and I'm sick of it.
so they like stuck a pink bow to her head. There was no hair for the bow to sit on. I don't know how they did that. They put a bow on the head somehow, maybe with like a little band or something, to make sure that people didn't call their baby girl a boy. And you see people like that who are so like, oh, no, you must not accidentally misgender my baby. You tell them you're trans, and it's deliberate misgendering left, right, and centre, you know? But no, you cannot accidentally misgender the little blob of a human or their dog. I just don't see why it's something you have to be proud about. I feel like there are different types of pride, and it's perfectly valid to be proud of yourself for something that's meant like is an achievement in your life where you've had to, or, you know, just anything. I scrap that. It's fine to be proud of yourself. You be proud of yourself for being able to get out of the bed in the morning and brush your teeth. You be proud of yourself for ticking off even just one thing on your to-do list. You be proud of your achievements, of what you're doing in life, and of who you are. And there is nothing wrong with that. I think when it comes to being LGBTQ+, there's so much like discomfort from people and like pushback about like,
Oh, what have you got to be proud about? Why are you so proud of being your identity?
and it's like, partly, like for me personally, it's because there's adversity related to it. There's like the discrimination that LGBTQ plus people face and the hurdles to overcome, and just still the lack of equal rights. You are allowed to be proud of who you are and like shout about who you are and be loud about it and be like, yes, this is me and I am proud of that, because so many people tell me I can't be proud of that, tell me I shouldn't be proud of that, tell me I'm wrong for who I am. But I know there's nothing wrong with me. I know that I am perfectly wonderful, and my identity doesn't invalidate me as a human being who's worthy of respect. And also my identity is valid and my identity is worthy of respect, and I am proud of that. I'm proud of who I am. I think that LGBTQ plus people have a lot to be proud of. And I always think the comments about just don't understand why you're so proud of it. It's like, oh, you think you're so special because you're trans. It's like, no, I don't think I'm special. I'm so thrilled you're on such a special journey. Oh, we're talking of special. This one, I don't mind so much. No, this one doesn't annoy me. I'm so thrilled you're on such a special journey. I think it could be kind of cute. It does depend on the tone and the kind of past experiences you've had with the person who said this, but I could imagine some people in my life being like, I'm so proud of the journey you're going on. I'm so excited for you to embarking on this journey. I'm sure people have actually said something similar to me. Personally, it doesn't bother me, but it's because I know the people saying that meant it very positively, and they were like, we're proud of what you're doing, we're here to support you in what you're doing, and we can't wait to watch you go on this journey and become who you are. And that's the kind of place it was coming from. But if it's coming from a different place, which I can't think of off the top of my head right now, I could see why it would maybe not be taken well. But I don't have a problem with this one personally. On the face of it, without more context, it seems okay. Comment below if you disagree. I may be missing something here. But are you actually happy like that? Oh, just because you wouldn't be happy doesn't mean I'm not happy. Also as well, when it comes to being trans, and it's like, are you actually happy like that? It's like, well, I prefer not to be. Life would be easier if I weren't, but life would also be very different, and not always different in a positive way. But I am happy with who I am. It took a while for me to be happy, but I would have been less happy had I not done anything. The only way for me to be more, like, potentially more happy with who I am, but not happy. Happy's the wrong word. I don't know what the right word would be, but for my life to be easier in terms of my identity would be to not be who I am. It's impossible for me to not be trans. It's just a thing that is there, and yes, I am happy like this. Can't you dress like that without calling yourself trans? Ew. I feel like this, to me, this is the worst one of these so far. It's such like a, oh, why can't you just be happy as a masculine woman, is what like trans guys get quite a lot. And like, why can't you just be happy as a feminine man? And it's all this like,
There's nothing wrong with having different gender expression to your identity. You can be a feminine man or a masculine woman.
and it's like, it's nothing to do with that. I'd have no problem being a masculine man or a feminine man or a mixture of the both. I'd have no problem being a masculine woman if that's who I was. But I am not a woman. Therefore, the way I dress is not what impacts me calling myself trans. It's not what impacts me being trans. My gender expression is separate from my identity and separate from the fact that I am transgender. I see like a lot of pushback, particularly from TERFs, gender critical transphobes, who are like, oh, all the to trans men mostly, like, all of these women just don't want to be masculine, and they're kind of, they're saying that you need to be stereotypically feminine to be a woman, otherwise why not just be a man? And they're betraying, gender expression and like a spectrum of like gender expression and stuff, and it's not anything to do with that. I think often it's people who are more transphobic or uncomfortable with trans people who put more emphasis on gender expression needing to correlate with gender identity, but then kind of twist that and say that trans people are doing that and that's why they're transitioning, so that they're not gender non-conforming, and it's like, has nothing to do with that. Wow, you look better in a dress than I do. That is definitely a well-meaning cis het trying to compliment somebody. I get a lot of comments from cis guys being like, oh, nice one, mate. You've got a better beard than I do. I appreciate the positive sentiment, but I'm not really sure what people were expecting. I think it all boils back down to this expectation of like, trans people don't actually look like their gender, do they? Trans people will always stick out. Trans people will always be noticeably trans, and there's nothing wrong with being noticeably trans, obviously, but it's a misconception that all trans people will have like a certain look about them, That's what this gives me the vibe of. It's not the worst, but yes. I'm glad you were able to make something of your life despite everything. Definitely well-meaning, not really hitting the right level, is it? It is said with the best of intentions. Lovely, thank you. Yes, despite everything, I made something of my life. I'd never have guessed. Oh my goodness. A transgender before my eyes. I never would have known. We're rounding up the video on probably like the most common one. I'd never have guessed. Thank you. I'd find this one difficult because I know it's from a good place. I know it's said with good intentions, well-meaning cis hats. I think most of these are said with some level of good intention and well-meaning, but I know this is meant as a compliment and almost as a reassurance. It's definitely something I still hear now when I tell people I'm trans. It's definitely this vibe of like, oh, I never would have known. Which isn't the worst way of phrasing it. I've had it could have fooled me when I said that I was trans, and I was like, what am I fooling you of? I'm very confused right now. I'm not trying to fool anybody. But yeah, I'd never have guessed. It's definitely meant as a compliment, but it's just one of those things that just heard so frequently. I prefer, if somebody wants to give a compliment, I prefer no compliments because I'm awful with compliments, especially in person. But I prefer that if somebody insisted on giving a compliment, that it was not something that was like, despite being trans kind of vibe. It's just a, hey, I like your beard, not a, hey, you have a good beard for a trans guy. It's like, oh, I'd never have guessed, oh, you're looking so good for a trans person. It's a very trans-rooted compliment that I think unless you know somebody quite well and you know how they would feel about this type of thing, probably best to not say. You think it? but maybe not say it. That's it for the well-meaning cisgender heterosexuals for this episode. I'm sure I would love to be back with another one of these if there's enough content again in the future, but we'll see. And yeah, if you did like this video, think about giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you want to. You can also click the little join button. And just a little reminder that you can go listen to Darren Brown's Bootcamp for the Brain on Audible right now. And you can also choose from many other wellness related podcasts and audiobooks if you want to. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye.